Up next, we celebrate a true trailblazer of rock and pop music, a tribute to my hero, the man who gave life to all the classic songs of the 70s and the 80s, a legend that brought all of us together every week to honor the biggest songs of the times, including an exclusive interview. For any of you that came of age in the 70s and 80s, this one's going to bring a smile to your face. Next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies. Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you love the music of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond, you're going to want to subscribe below so you don't miss out. We are now a daily channel. So I'm an ordinary, average guy. I was born and raised in a small town called Blackfoot, Idaho. I've been living a dream for the last 7 years or so, interviewing over 500 of the greatest music legends about the greatest songs of all time. I personally heard the story of thousands of songs directly from them. I attribute this blessing to one extraordinary icon, Casey Kasem. To all of us 70s and 80s kids, Casey is on the same sacred ground as Sesame Street and Han Solo, Marty McFly, Johnny Carson, Steven Spielberg, John Hughes, Saturday Night Live, Dick Clark, and Mr. Rogers. I mean, he was truly a touchstone of our childhood as the father of the American Top 40 Countdown. And we lost him sadly in June of 2014. I don't know if I can convey to the younger generations what this weekly show meant to all of us. It was my window to the world and the cardinal authority for my rock and pop education. Like many across this nation, I listened valiantly until Casey crowned the #1 song every single week. I guess a good comparison might be what Little Orphan Annie meant to Ralphie in A Christmas Story, except that we had a lot of other distractions like television and cable and Atari, but we always made time for Casey. I always say that the first time that I heard rock and roll, I felt like I was busting out of prison. Well, Casey was one of the keys that opened that door for me. With his stories behind the hits, his flashbacks to early rock and roll, his masterful trivia, I mean, he opened up a realm of infinite possibilities to a small town kid like myself. With his heartfelt, long-distance dedications, he made the world a lot smaller and much more united. His voice was so passionate, yet tranquil. It was sweet, completely distinct. It just grabbed you ever so gently by the ear, and it made you want to listen. Every week when he counted down the hits, he'd always hearken back to the pioneers, and he'd honor those legacies and the great artists and songs that inspired what we were hearing at that moment in the present. He taught us the true value of music, and he shared the intricate stories behind the songs and the artists who created them. He just set the standard that has become really the blueprint that is followed to this day. He was undoubtedly the class of the dial. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without his influence, and I take a piece of him with me in every interview that I do. The thing that I missed so much as a kid, either having the cassette or the product, the physical product, putting that record on and picking up a record like this, the Righteous Brothers, and looking at the cover and the back and reading the liner notes. The new generation is missing out on that.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
It's really sad, because I think that it gives you a conduit into the music.
Yes.
A snapshot of what, who wrote this song. Because I always used to listen to the Top 40 Countdown with Casey Kasem. He would tell a story behind the song and talk about Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil, and they wrote these great songs in the 60s, and then he'd play a song, and that connected you to all of that music, and that's missing.
That's great, and I think what you're doing is just fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
It really is. It's great.
We got to keep these songs going in people's minds. He also influenced us 70s and 80s kids in another extremely vital but lost art, Saturday morning cartoons. He was the mouthpiece of Shaggy and Robin from Super Friends, so many other characters in various kids programs. You always knew when it was Casey behind those characters because His voice broke through to our spirit and he calmed us. And that's a great service to the ADD generation, I might add. When I say that he calmed us, I mean that, like many of you, I'm sure, I personally had a lot of fears as a kid growing up in the 80s. I mean, the evening news was full of negativity and trauma, talk of nuclear war all the time. Milk cartons had pictures of missing children on them. That freaked us out. We witnessed the tragedy of the Challenger exploding live on television, for heaven's sake. Now, I'm not saying that we had it any harder than other generations. My point is, Casey Kasem was one of the consistent positive influences that you could count on every single week without fail. He was so iconic. Whether you saw him or you heard him, again, his voice was unmistakable. But his voice was also so personable. When he ended each show with those magical words,
"Keep your feet in the ground and keep reaching for the stars,"
I knew he was talking directly to me. Now, I know a million other people probably thought the same thing, but he was the undisputed king of the airwaves and the irrefutable bastion of pop radio. He was also a great mercenary for fairness in entertainment's depictions of minorities. He was an advocate for animals and the homeless. I had a chance to talk with his daughter, Kerri Kasem, about her father and some of his qualities. Here's what she said.
There was a time, this is when I was very, very young. I loved the Black Stallion, the movie, and I just was a massive horse fan. Yeah, when my mom and dad got divorced, that movie came out shortly after. And he went every single weekend. He took me to see that film. Every single weekend until it was out of the box office. Probably saw it 13, 14 times, I don't know. We saw it every weekend because he knew how much I loved it. When I was having a hard time in school and my mom and dad were not living together anymore, they were divorced or divorcing, he came every day at recess to check to see if I had turned my homework in, to see how I was doing. Even at the height of his career, you know, when he was super busy, he was always there for us. Always there for us. It didn't matter. I mean, what he was doing or where he had to go, what award or what show he had to do, he showed up for his kids. Always. He always had a story, you know, that he's like, well, this is what I did, and this is why you shouldn't do it, and this is what I learned from this. From smoking cigarettes to taking these awake pills to do a show to drinking coffee or wine, and why he got rid of all that stuff. And he always said that you'll stop doing something when something beyond it is more important. And I didn't quite get that. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, well, whatever that vice is or whatever something is that you're not doing, whatever it's a behavior, whatever, that's stopping you from getting somewhere you really want to be, you'll stop that behavior. You'll stop that vice. You'll stop, and then you'll get there. And he would tell me that as a kid. I didn't quite get it until I started going, okay, that's not something I should be doing, or maybe I should.
Yeah.
Maybe I should do this. I go, you know what? This is where I want to be in my career. I got to stop doing this, right? So it came later. The stories that he would tell me and the anecdotes and everything that really shaped who I am today as a human being. I would go, oh my God, that's what he meant.
When I heard that he was sick, it broke my heart. Our nation mourned his passing, and he's been truly missed. His birthday is on April 27th, so I'm asking, please join with me in celebration of a truly great man and the legacy that he left that still inspires us today. In honor of Casey Kasem, I'm going to replace my usual goodbye with his immortal words. Keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Thanks, Casey.